thank you for having us, and thank you for having us both. I'm not a researcher, I'm a practical person. So coming from medicine, from psychology, and with an MBA, I'm very much into what really matters at the workplace. And to present this to you in Copenhagen, it was very exciting for us, and I'm very happy to have Sina with me because she's the real researcher here. And so she will cover the middle part of it, so that also she can answer the questions that might come up, because it's really, for us, a very exciting kind of research that we've done, and hopefully some of you will share our excitement and on it, and maybe build on it for future endeavors. So that at least is our hope, to bridge that gap that we sometimes perceive between the practical part, the practical side of economy, and research which is done in academia. So we're talking about stress and satisfaction in the workplace, and we will present something around the results of a validation of a stress satisfaction score that we have developed against the Copenhagen Psychosocial Questionnaire, which is of course one of the most renowned instruments, which I'm very fond of, and what we have also used in the past as well. So that is, of course, exciting. In Germany, we would say, in die Höhle des Löwen gehen. So have mercy, but be critical as well. So we are really, really looking forward to fruitful discussions. So that is in the beginning. Yes, normally at the beginning of a presentation, you're asked to switch off your mobile phones. So with us, it's different. We say, please get your mobile phones, because you will need them afterwards. During the presentation, we will do some interactive things by internet. So make sure that you have internet connection. The password is community, with a capital C in the beginning, and double M, community. So make sure that you have internet connection, and the rest will follow them. So we will do something live, real time together. All right. Good. So some words about SAP, where the two of us come from. SAP is the largest provider of business software solutions worldwide, and it's also the most valuable company within SAP stock market, even more valuable than Siemens, which you can see, although Siemens has 3 times as many employees as us and a lot of assets, of course. This is one of the big trends, that everything in IT becomes more valuable, because of the scalability of things, because of the margins that you can reach in business, and of course because of the future trust that people do have with regards to future success also within the digitalization and globalized world. Some numbers for you in here, so almost 100,000 employees and more than 400,000 customers in almost all countries in the world. Our community of employees is very, very international, also at our headquarters, which is based near Mannheim in Germany. So it's a real international workplace. The normal language is English. People are truly collaborating globally. So most companies today who say we're a global company, they think they're global because they have some offices somewhere. But at SAP, it's really that people work together in the same team at different continents, different countries at the same time. So this is a challenge, of course, and I will tell you more about this. So some impressions of workplaces. This is quite different to what most of you deal with when you are doing your studies on workplace hazards, right? When we have a look at this, then we can say, yes, at SAP, 100% of our workplaces are like this, but an increasing amount in normal, traditional manufacturing companies, it's the same. So we do have a tendency, a trend for a long time now, that only 20% of our workplaces are in manufacturing. The rest is in Dienstleistung, so in services or in sales or in whatever. So, but it's not in real industry anymore. And when we have a look at where research goes to, often it has to do with the traditional thinking about what is hazardous. And hazardous in the tradition, in the historical thing, it was about implications on the body, so physical health hazards. And for two reasons, we're still dealing with this most of the time. One is the historical thing, that's where it comes from, that's where legislation comes from as well, but also because it's easier to measure. Let's be honest, it's easier to measure. We all know that most of the impact to health is things that have to do with the way we are treated, the way we feel, the culture that is there, also in your environment. You all have experience enough to recall settings where you did not feel treated well or did not feel appreciated well, and you can remember that this had an effect how you felt and how your well-being was and how your health was. On the other hand, even in circumstances that might not fulfill all official regulations, when there's great team spirit, people love what they do, there's purposeful things to do, and you all roll up your sleeves and you get things done together. What a spirit is there! And even if you have long working hours, even if the conditions, measurable external conditions, are not in an optimal way, it will not harm you. So there's a lot of these things that we all know because it's gut feeling, it's common sense. But we do not pay attention to these parts from a scientific view often, right? So there are some old research on stress, of course, but not on these interlinks. So that is one of the things I hope to maybe get some of your interest to more linking towards these psychosocial and psychomental impacts as well, and give you some more food for this. So let's talk about the circumstances here. This looks very nice. Most people, where we show these pictures, and oh, these are nice areas, and wow, what a nice environment, and it seems that a lot of money was invested for people and a nice culture, etc. Yes, that's all true. But on the other hand, it's a real tough environment. IT industry is on the spear front, on the forefront of the development in globalized and digitalized world, of course. And as SAP, we're also inducing this, right? We're driving this change, and on the other hand, as well, we are suffering from the results or from these circumstances as well. So we need to understand what are the impacts of globalization and digitalization on the people generally, and also on manufacturing people. That's what combines us all. But it is only fair that we are on the spear, on the front end. We suffer most, I would say, because the speed is so fast in IT industry. And that we also are called for bringing solutions to the world. So what is the environment people need in order to balance these things, right? So what we call this world is the VUCA world. Are you familiar with this term already? Can you just raise your hand, who is? So, okay, so right now in the corporate world, I would say 80% right now know the term. It took a while over the past years. VUCA is a term that originally comes from military to describe settings that are very volatile. So things change easy, settings change easy. Very uncertain, that is U for VUCA. Very, very complex and ambiguous. Nicht eindeutig, okay, ambiguous. And this has developed over the last couple of years. This is the acronym for describing a globalized and a digitalized world, where from this world, from this VUCA, everything derives what stresses us. So everything that is like the 24/7 always on mentality, not to switch off, the high pressure, the speed, anxiety because you have a lack of control. It's so complex what you have to deal with. It frightens you. Okay, you cannot know everything. Knowledge is spreading so quickly. So all this. And we all in this room, although living in different areas and working in different spaces, we all know what we're talking about. It's maybe not in the same impact, but we all know it. So that's what we call VUCA. And you can see here on the right side, it is excessive demand. The excessive demand on people, the constant change of the information overflow, we all know this, the imbalance it causes, and so we have talked about it already. And that is one important thing for the story we tell internally, is that this human impact from VUCA world is on ourselves. It's also on our colleagues and peers, but it's also on our managers. It's also on our team members and our customers. So customer is a very broad definition, right? You have also customers, people you deliver things to, etc., right? So this is something we need in empathy. We need to understand that this excessive demand is really reaching on everyone. So what is the challenge in the end? That we need to balance this, right? We need to balance this, and what is the balance is about well-being. So how do we get hardliner managers to get them think about well-being of their people? That is, what is the story we need to tell? So this is a personal story from those who actually are driving health management in corporations, right? Because not everyone sees it. They say, well, I have my numbers to fulfill. Why should I care about health and well-being? Okay, why? All right. So what we must make them understand is, first of all, understand that this demand, this excessive demand, relies on everyone, and that we all can only be successful when we are bringing out the best in our people. The best in our people to be successful, because this is the differentiator. This is the competitive advantage. When my people do better collaborate and get things done as your people, then I will be more successful on the market. As easy as that. That is the business case. So people need to understand this, okay? So when we look at SAP's numbers in terms of employee surveys, etc., they are great numbers. I don't know any company that has better numbers than that. So we have a very high engaged workforce, and people collaborate well, and there's a great climate, etc. But that is not for granted. That is not guaranteed. We do a lot for it, and we need to measure also to at an early stage to find countermeasures when things go in the wrong direction. So why should we care with these great numbers about stress satisfaction and about our culture? And we have our CEO saying these quotes here. I'm not going to read them, but keep in mind that this is the business case for all organizations. By the way, also for your organizations. It's for all. We all have this in common. To meet our strategic goals, we need our people to run at their best. When you have a certain amount of people in your team who do, well, I just need to fulfill my contract, this, and they just do as much as they must, you will not be as successful as a team in the outcomes as if there's a real, true team spirit of collaborating and wanting to get things done. As easy as that. So that is, the big question then is, what makes people run, right? So it's about a healthy culture, it's about happiness at work. And it's about happy customers. There's research out there, plenty of it. You probably know it better than we do, about the link between highly engaged and happy people and happy customers that they produce. Okay, and the happiness, being happy at work, is the most powerful protection factor against all kinds of hazards, also hardcore physical hazards. Being happy at work makes a difference. Give you an example from medicine, totally different area. When people do have a stroke, okay, which is, you can objectivize, you can see it in the CT scan or in the MRT, you can see where the stroke is, what is the damage. There's a significant difference of those people who are in a happy environment where their family cares, comes to them, talks with them, etc., and the outcome of those who are not happy in their family environment. Extreme difference in the outcome. And that is, we are not machines. Things work. And so you could say, how can this be? It's a neurological deficit is there, right? But there's so many factors, co-factors in there. And the same applies for physical hazards, of course, right? Of ergonomic impact of whatever. Okay, so happiness at work, and we have not really taken care of it. Did you ever read in the papers, in the economic parts of papers around that happiness is measured at work and the impact it does have on profitability? We started to measure that, and it will be the future, and the connections to health and well-being are evident, right? All right, so how would you rate, you personally rate? And so now we come to your smartphones. How would you personally rate the impact of your well-being, okay, on your personal performance? So on a scale from 1 to 10, and Sina will conduct this with you, you go to the www.menti.com, and the code is there, 178079. So you can vote, and it will not be transparent, okay, your individual vote. We will just see the aggregated results. By the way, this is how we conduct learning sessions at SAP with managers on all kinds of topics. So it's very easy to set up and to immediately see what the results are, right? Okay, so the impact, you see, with 8.7 on average, and here you can see, doesn't work right here. Here you can see the Verteilungskurve. I don't know what this is in English. Distribution, yeah, thank you. This is pretty much the same as it is rated at SAP. It is 8.6 is the average, right? So again, this is again a proof point that we do have more in common that separates us. Right? You rate the same, although you could see, well, I'm a researcher and I have more time for doing things, and there's, it's not directly quarterly results driven. I do not have to go out and sell things, right? But still you would say it's 8.5. You would rate the impact on your performance because we're all humans, right? All right, so thank you, Sina. So what do we do with this? Just 3 short slides about SAP's health strategy, because of course we deal with this impact. When you say health and well-being does have an impact on performance. And that is what we need to improve as high as possible to be a key differentiator on the market. So this is our healthy culture framework. You can see that the healthy culture is in the center of it, and then there's individual health, and then there's organizational health, and both of it we do address. The individual health part is the one that is probably with you more familiar because it addresses what is more common. People think about health, what their physical conditions, and the absence of a flu or heart pain or back pain or whatever. And the term that we introduced was organizational health, and that is the framework, the general conditions that make people that can foster health and well-being or hinder health and well-being. And when we all collectively look at impacts on the workplace that can drive us sick, we literally say that makes us sick. We often think about communication, about structures, about processes, about bureaucracy, about whatever makes us sick. And you can measure that this makes people sick. So this needs to be incorporated into the way we view on health in corporations or in organizations. Yes, also in yours. I'm sure that if you could decide everything you would like to decide in your organization you're working for, immediately you could think about things you would change. I'm very sure, right? And often this is regarded structures or processes or the way things are done, the way things are treated, etc. So this is culture, and this is around organizational health. Okay, so what do we do for the organization at SAP? We measure cultural conditions. I removed some slides in here in order to stay in time, but just for your information, we actually also, almost 10 years ago now, we have started to measure the healthy culture And we also link it to profitability. So we measure healthy culture with a set of 9 questions and have an index in there, and then with a sophisticated model, in the end we show that 1 percentage point difference in this health culture results in 95 million euros profit. Okay? That is something that makes our CFO, our Chief Finance Officer, talk about this. So we do everything we can to pull health, safety, well-being, all this out of the nice-to-have corner, and everything besides legal legislation, right, is often regarded as nice-to-have, into the real business side. So what's in, what makes it, how can it improve your business by caring for it? We also do a lot for inspiring healthy habits in leaders and employees. There's literally no program that you can think of that we do not have somewhere at SAP. Almost every day some idea is coming up, and we try this and we try that. So it's a very lively thing, and we incorporate ideas and feedback and suggestions from the workforce, from managers every day. So it's a very living thing. And very important, connecting the dots for tailored portfolio programs, trainings and solutions, because one of the big trends also derived from globalization and digitalization is you must leave your silos in thinking and in organization in order to be successful. So collaboration is key. No one can be successful in his own, im eigenen Saft schmoren, yeah? To be in your own circle all the time. So the more you open up, the more you share, the more you learn from each other, the more you're able to collaborate across cultures, across languages, the better your outcome will be in the end. And this also starts with areas within an organization to collaborate. Of course, when we have this very broad approach in health, we need to collaborate with the HR organization, with learning organization. We need to speak the language of the business and to get our things into there so that they adapt it, so it's adopted in their DNA. Okay, so just some glimpses here on things that we do. This is, for instance, infographics that hang out there, or they are in the corporate portal. We provide, of course, digital newspapers with videos, with everything on a lot of touch points where people, regardless what they want to achieve or what they want to care for, they get help. And also on a remote basis, 100% of employees are covered by the Employee Assistance Program, where you can call 24 hours a day with all kinds of issues and life challenges that you have, things like that. So we always need to take care of scalability. So the question that summarizes everything is, how can we support our people best to run at their best? So that is the essence of what we need to care for. And it's not just as SAP, it's all the companies. Not all companies do express it already like this, but that is the essence. And everyone who has understood that is in the forefront of it. That is the essence. How can we support our people best to run at their best? And health, well-being, happiness, however you call it, it's a vehicle to this. Okay, and so that is the good news, that it really pays off in the end. So we really have a great story to tell. Okay, and of course we need to steer it. We need to have touch points and marks and measurable impact in there, and we need to assess risk and resources at work, because we need to know when we understand what makes people happy or what makes people unhappy about things, then we need to measure the extent, and we need to understand why this department has different results in the employee service than that department. Why is that? So we need to have data around this, right? And this is vital. Okay, purpose of this we all have in common, happy and healthy workplaces. This is still, among all the change, it's still the mantra of it, of course. Okay, and we need to have data and evidence. So just in short, some summary on on trends in digital transformation with respect to assessments at the workplace. And then I will hand over to Sina to give you a deep dive into what we have done and what hopefully is of interest as well, okay? So trends in digital transformation. One thing we have already mentioned, there's a huge shift during the last 25 years within economic sectors, right? And right now we have around 20, so we have over time, there's like the first sector, which is fishing, agraric, mining, etc. This went down in mankind, right, like this. It's around stable, around 1% of the workplaces. Then we do have manufacturing, which was in the industry. Industrial revolution was I must do it this way, was a high peak, and then it goes down, and now it's quite stable around 20-25%, 20-22% something, right? And then we have at a certain point all the services industries going up, right? And this is the third sector. Today we already talk about the fourth and the fifth sector. There's the fourth sector being the knowledge industry, which is yours as well. And the fifth would be something like human-to-human services, which will be probably something very specific already. So classical economic hazards will go down with digitalization even more, because the most hazardous task will increasingly be done by robots. Okay, so the shift of physical health hazards is going towards mental burden for the reasons we have discussed already. And this is also in all kinds of workforces, all kinds of workforces. So we must increasingly deal with this, right? Okay, and we have already talked about the critical competitive advantage with people, and that engagement is triggered by experience. Why am I saying this? Experience does not seem to be the most scientific word or the most economic buzzword, but that is the center what we're talking about. Because there's no such thing as an objective stressor that with work that is being put on people. So something what you might love to do, for me would be the total stress, or vice versa. So, and even if we could measure objectively the conditions around it, there might be a significant difference in the way we perceive it. So perception is about our experience, and that is what triggers well-being, nothing else. Nothing else, it's about perception, okay? So we need to take this into consideration, because still many companies who do, which is not many do it overall, but even those who do assess health risk regularly, most of them still try to do it objectively only, okay? Which is far away from what we really need, okay? So there's a shift from assessing working conditions, objectives one, towards assessing perception and needs. Okay, so what do you need in order to feel better, in order to whatever? And that is a very personal question. Very personal question. Can you do that by assessments only? No. It takes what? It takes collaboration and interaction and communication. So we need to make leaders capable of having these conversations and to accept this as part of their task. Okay, so most large and mid-sized companies already conduct surveys. The big ones of more than 90%, two-thirds of the mid-sized companies, and of the group who is regarded as best in the best practice group, they all, 88% of them, they are getting data on to improve satisfaction, commitment, and engagement. They ask on perception, right? So what is the challenge? The digitalization makes surveys very easy, as you could see in what you've done. It doesn't take 5 minutes to set it up, and the result is immediately there. It's easy to analyze. You have, on the other hand, you have a dramatic increase of surveys. At SAP, we have more than 2,000 surveys a year. Not on everyone, of course, but it's a dramatic increase, okay? And again, we produce an overflow of information, okay? And a complexity that is hard to handle. And also frustration, what's happening with these results? I have answered to this so many times, so what are you doing with this, right? Okay, and the challenge is of course also relevance. So when we conduct annual surveys, there's still a delay until the results are delivered, because the executive board wants to review it and then set targets for the organization, have it analyzed, etc. But by the time these results come out, when the gap is too long, then already the data are not relevant anymore, because in many cases there have been reorganizations. So now your data from you as management, they're not relevant anymore because you have changed your team. So what is the consequence then? So a lot of things. So we need to have data in real time in the future. We need to have data, as we did have now, together with you, right? The overwhelming data, of course, is the C in VUCA, the challenge, and this cause ambiguous results without consequences. That is very, very bad in organizations, right? When people take time, and at least you must be appreciative and, okay, now thank you for participating, this is the result, and that's what we are going to do with it. Okay, the demand, and this is a very important point. We have a huge shift in the workforce. So from generation Y to generation Z, people today are used to being asked all the time. Okay, do you like it? Do you like it? It's this or it's that. That is a poll, right? And we do answer with on a simple question with just yes or no. And the expectations are going in this direction also at the workplace, especially for the younger generation, that the surveys, everything that is done, needs to be short and crisp and attractive, and then they will participate in it. But no long questionnaires or something, right? So the people are used to vote and they want to give feedback, but the survey overflow can be stand against it, and it can be hard to track. And the very short attention span, especially in the younger generation, is another challenge. Not only with regard to surveys, by the way. So simplicity is a must in the end. So, if we take it to the extreme now, our learning, if we could ask one question only on the workplace, what would it be? One question only. Okay? Wouldn't it be around happiness? Wouldn't it be around happiness? Okay? So, what we did is, and what we would like to share with you today, is we didn't ask one question, because this one question on happiness is not so easy to operationalize in the one-on-one talk from the manager to the employee, because it can be very personal, right? What makes you happy or something. Yeah? But so what we did is we asked two questions. Okay? So what if you would ask two questions? What would they be? Wouldn't it be around stress and satisfaction? Remember this balance that we had. On one side, everything directly derived from VUCA world. Remember, always on, and the speed, and the change, and the anxiety, and the complexity, and everything, that all the burden, one side. What does balance this? This was human needs. And the good news is, and that's also the story we tell, also to the managers, is the VUCA side, that is changing dramatically, that is increasing dramatically. But the good news is, what is here on this side, on the needs side of humans, that does not change at all. It's the same in Stone Age as today as it will in 1,000 years, because it's hardwired in us, our needs. When you ask people, regardless where in the world they are, and you ask them around when do you love your job? Yeah? When do you really like what you do? It's always the same answers, what you get. It's about appreciation, it's about recognition, it's about being respected, it's about being treated fairly, it's about having a perspective, it's about being empowered to a certain extent, it's about having a circle of influence, whatever, seeing a result, it's always the same. It's always the same. As easy as that. And if you as a leader in an organization provide this, on the other hand, that makes people satisfied. All right, so let's measure. Let's go and measure these two sides in the most simple way. Okay? So again, you need your smartphone. And now we go for yourself. So take the last 2 weeks on average. What is your average stress that you felt? And 10 is the maximum. So 10 is 1 drop more and it's a breakdown. Okay? So this is really the maximum. And how, on average, how satisfied were you with your work? There's a huge spread. Do you see this? A huge spread in the audience, right? From stress, from almost no until maximum. Satisfaction also. Okay? So the difference, there's a difference towards the corporate world in here. So in the corporate world, at SAP, we do have an average of stress around here, about 7.5, and the satisfaction also like in here. And the difference is not that much. So we have little around it.
Smaller distribution.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but the good thing is, on average, your satisfaction is higher than your stress. That doesn't say anything about the individual, of course, but those of you where it's the other way around, where the stress is higher than the satisfaction, that is a call for action, because that has an impact on your health. It will have an impact on your health if you don't change it. Right? So if you were SAP employees, I would say then come, and I invite you to get for counseling or give you some more advice what you can do, and talk to your supervisor to change things, etc. Okay. All right, so just one short notice that you understand how we practically work with this is that we also calibrate with people. So it's a one-on-one session. So if I had asked you as supervisor and said, so what is your stress and your satisfaction, then I would ask, the second question would be, what is in an ideal world, when everything would be on your wish list, your perfect job, a perfect job, how high would your stress be? Okay? So everyone can have, for yourself, we don't do it now here. But so how high would the corresponding stress be in your ideal world? Okay? And the second calibration question for the satisfaction would be, if we also ask about ideal world, everyone would say 10, right? So it's not good for calibration. So what we ask is, what was the highest score you've ever had in a job? Has everyone an answer for yourself? Okay. So if you had answered before, my satisfaction is a 6, but you've never had more than a 6. It's a totally different story, as if you know, in my last job it was a 9, and that was the reason. Okay, then you know some parameters. And in a dialogue with your supervisor, this is very important to understand what you need to get a 9 or something like this. So just a short glimpse to how we work with this thing. And for us, it was very important to understand, is this really something where we could replace also? Because until today, we only worked with this on an individual basis. We didn't assess it over the whole population in our assessments so far. And we wanted to know, with a renowned COPSOC, which very much addresses in the stress demands and resources model, can we shorten it to 2 questions to get a result that is operationable for us? Okay, so that was the result. And we integrate this into leadership concepts, so what we did so far, and this is our study to show you the details. And I'm very happy, Sina, that you are with me, because as I said in the beginning, I'm not a scientist. I could not explain it as well as Sina does it. So what we do with this stress satisfaction score is that we integrate it into our performance feedback talks 4 times a year at least. We call it sub-talk. So this is around how to do encourage the conversation between the manager and the employee. And we want to and we started to include these in one-on-one situations. And now we think about including it into the overall survey that we conduct.
So, thank you, Natalie. So, first, why did we conduct the study we did? Like Natalie said, we want to simplify the measurement of, on the one hand, job demands, on the other hand, job resources, because those long questionnaires of 80, 90 items are not really actionable when it comes to everyday work, because no one has the time to conduct half-an-hour surveys every week or every month. And the second, we consider the attention span and the attractiveness of a survey to the audience, to our target group, by lowering the number of items to 2 items about stress and about satisfaction. So our research questions we started with was, does our 2-item assessment about stress and satisfaction, can that measure the job demands and the job resources? And we based that whole idea on the job demands resources model. I think most of you know it. It's related to the job demands control model, which Jolene earlier introduced. So on the upper side are job demands and health. And the idea is that job demands are negatively associated with health. And on the lower side, there's job resources, and the idea is that job resources are positively associated with motivation, and that in the end it connects to organizational outcome. In the current study, we have focused on the highlighted parts, the job demands and resources, as well as on health. So our hypotheses were, on the one hand, the validation part, that the SAP stress item can in fact measure the psychological variable of stress, that it can measure job demands, that the satisfaction item can measure the psychological variable of job satisfaction, and that it can measure job resources. And the second part was more content related. The hypothesis was, on the one hand, that stress is negatively associated with self-rated health, and on the other hand, that job satisfaction is positively associated. What we did, you can see here on the top the variables I've just described. In the middle part are the measures that we used for job stress. We used 2 different measures. One, the SAP stress item, and for the second one was the PSS4. It stands for Perceived Stress Scale, and it consists of 4 items. For job satisfaction, we used the scale of the COPSOC questionnaire as well as the SAP job satisfaction item. For job resources and demands, we both used the COPSOC questionnaire, one with 15 items, and for job demands with 13 items. And lastly, self-rated health, we also measured with the COPSOC questionnaire with 1 item. Our sample group consisted of participants of the SAP Executive Health Checkup, one of the health programs we have in place, and the sample group lastly consisted of 62 people, which is a return rate of 41%, which is, I think, pretty solid. So here an overview of the COPSOC questionnaire which we used. I'm not going to go into detail because of time restraints, but we used the COPSOC 3 version, and we used mostly the core items, so the short version, except for job satisfaction, because we used that for validating the scale. That's why we used the long version here. Coming to the results. So the first part of the results shows that the SAP stress item does indeed measure job stress as well as measures job demands. In more detail, you can see here, we have conducted a correlation between the stress item and the stress scale, and the correlation came out to be 0.31. It was significant, and we thought the rather medium instead of a large correlation might be due to the fact that the PSS4, the stress scale we used, is rather old. It has been designed in the 80s. And as you can see, the items are on the bottom, on the left bottom. The items are rather negative. So it's a really negative image towards stress. And the modern understanding is rather towards stress can also be helpful towards developing oneself and reaching one's performance and growing. So that's why we think this correlation is 0.31 as it is and not higher. But the key takeaway for us here is that as the stress item can indeed measure the psychological variable of stress. For validating it as a measure for job demands, we used the convergent validity as well as the discriminant validity. For the convergent validity, we correlated it against job demands, and as you can see overall, there was a strong positive correlation, and when we go into the different facets under job demands, there are also consistently positive correlations. In the discriminant validity, same procedure. The job resources overall had a negative correlation, and when we go into the different single facets, we see either weak negative correlations or no significant correlations at all. That's why we conclude that both the discriminant validity and the convergent validity are given, and that the stress item can measure job demands. The same we did for the job satisfaction item. So our results are that the job satisfaction item can measure the variable job satisfaction, and it can measure job demands, job resources. So we took the same procedure. The correlation between the single item and the scale was much higher here. It was 0.65, and which from that correlation we take away that it is indeed valid to say that the single item measures job satisfaction. Same procedure again for measuring job resources. On the convergent validity, you can see again a strong positive correlation with job resources, and again consistently positive correlations with all the different facets under job resources. On the job demands, we see a negative correlation overall, and same as for job stress, either negative weak correlations or no significant correlations at all. That's why we again take away that the job satisfaction item is indeed able to measure job resources. And as I said, the second part of the study was rather content related. And the first part of it is that stress is negatively associated with self-rated health, and that job satisfaction is positively associated with self-rated health. Here you can see we have conducted multiple regressions, first for the relationship between job demands and resources and self-rated health. Here you can see the expected results, that job demands are correlated or associated negatively with health, and that job resources are positively associated. And we see the same pattern for, in the middle table, the single items, as well as in the bottom table, the validated scales we've used. The only difference is with the single items, there was a significant negative effect of stress and a significant positive effect of satisfaction. But on the validated scales, we find the right direction of association with health for stress, but it didn't come out to be significant in this case. that is again one thing we say, okay, this might be due to the fact that the scale we used for stress is quite old and might not reflect the modern understanding we have of stress in our current working environment. And that is also one takeaway that the stress research, because I've been trying to find more recent scales and I've not been successful. That's why I've used this scale. So then, the stress satisfaction score Natalie has mentioned earlier, we subtract job stress from job satisfaction, and we've correlated that difference score to self-rated health. And what you can see here is that when the stress satisfaction score is negative, meaning that job stress is higher than job satisfaction, it is negatively correlated to health. And the same procedure we applied to the question or to the difference between what is your ideal stress you can imagine in a job and what is your current stress. And again, if that difference is negative, meaning that the current stress is higher than the ideal stress, it correlates negatively to self-rated health. So coming back to the initial idea and research question, can the job demand, the job stress and job satisfaction items measure job demands and resources? From this study, we take away that it is possible and that those two items can indeed be used in an everyday practice to measure demands and resources.
Okay, so thank you, Sina. I would say, because we have a couple of minutes left for questions on that, I would like to stop here. I hope it was we were successful in the first part to have a broad picture on the why, to make you understand some of the things that are relevant today for corporations and for organizations generally, why we need to have short and crisp assessments that are operationable. That means that we really can use them in our everyday life on an individual and an organizational level. And so Sina was presenting the results for that. Of course, we're very, very eager to hear your feedback and to have ideas, to get your ideas on this.
Came out of what Sina did. I mean, why not just start from your own experience, build up the data with your own collection of data instead of going back to these some, but maybe not really thorough validation.
It's a good point, but in the corporation, it's always also a political context. And the COPSOC is something. I mean, you know, COP is on a pedestal. And when we can show something, we say, look, COPSOC is great, and we're still loving COPSOC, and we related to it. And I like your question a lot because it allows me to answer that most of the things we need to do in an organization in order to bring forward health or safety things and well-being is things need to be plausible. They need to be acceptable. They need to build bridges that people can take it. And whatever it takes to build that bridge, that is helpful.
I mean, the correlations with the COPSOC turned out great. So I was questioning the stress scale because it is from the 80s. And what we see, we asked the people, what is your ideal stress score? And the mean average came out to be around 5. And when you look at the stress scale, the questions are always really negative. That you never would say, okay, I'm a medium level here, if you're not. If you're happy and content. So we're questioning whether that concept of stress as a purely negative concept is still valid in today's society, because like I said, stress can be useful, and there are studies that stress can actually improve brain activity and memory, and that stress might not be as
stress
negative.
is a bit like a judgment, right? Yeah. The word, whereas demands is more neutral, and we cannot survive without demands.
Are you also looking at the causes of stress and satisfaction?
In the end, we say that it is the obligation of the manager to take care, because the manager is the one who has most impact on the direct shape of the culture in the team. And he or she must take responsibility and know what stresses people and what he could do. When you just do it by in a survey, you get results, but these are the kinds of results that usually are not followed by action. That's our experience. We have 20 years experience in long surveys, globally, very sophisticatedly done, but the results are much less powerful and significantly impactful with the individual change for a person than the personal interaction, and that's why we do it.
Then I would like to thank Natalie and Sina really very much.
Thank you. Thank you.